Hello and welcome. I'm Darren, and today we are going to check out some Grand Theft Auto 5 RT montage that I've put together that I haven't even looked back at myself yet. And my computer just beeped at me. I don't know why that happened. So that's a little bit concerning, but hopefully it's not because it's about to run out of memory because my storage is getting crazy. So yes, I haven't even looked this back myself. I've been playing this a little bit in the past couple of days because it was actually quite good to get back to this game. I haven't played this game I don't think I've ever played this game realistically on PC. I played it on console when it first came out. That was about it. So there's a lot of stuff that I've actually forgotten on this game. So it's almost like a new game to me at this point. And to be fair, it still holds up pretty well in this day and age. Like, realistically, from the some of the shit that you see, it's pretty good. So, I mean, the cutscenes and some of these details, alright, they do look a bit aged, but I mean, let's be honest, there's stuff like that nowadays. And there's other stuff in there that kind of looks quite good. So, as a whole, with the gameplay element in, it's still actually a pretty damn good game nowadays. So, anyway, let's check it out. So I haven't actually labelled them, but we can figure it out by the frame rate because without RT, we're hitting the 120 FPS frame rate cap anyway. We are at 4K, everything's cracked. Oh, that happened quite quick. So let's have a look. In this this is obviously with RT turned off. So there's very kind of pronounced shadows. And this is kind of what I've said in the past when it comes to RT. You might like it, you might not like it, you might prefer without. Obviously, I think a lot of people don't like it for the performance hit, but when it actually comes to the visual aspect of it, you do tend to get more of a contrast image with RT off because you will get the very strong shadows and then the very strong lighting, whereas obviously stuff becomes more diffused once you turn on RT and some stuff becomes a bit more subtle, and then you tend to get more illuminated areas where you get light bounce, whereas with no RT you don't have that issue, so you won't get light bounce off anywhere. And here it'll be a lot more darker, a lot more contrasty. But I think there's also, like, some of these shadows are all a little bit flickery and they're not great. As you can see, crank RT on and everything becomes a little bit more diffused, a lot more defined, a lot more stable. I think it's a nice looking image, personally. Some of this stuff I don't even know myself what it's going to look like. This might not be that transformative, so this is with no RT. Be interesting to have actually a look in this scenario. I just basically just shot a couple of scenarios that I thought there might not actually be that much in the way of change. And to be fair, I don't think I can really see much in the... I suppose... Did it change... Hold on. Did it change the way that the... It does kind of change the illumination a bit. I don't think it really changes the way the headlights are diffused. You do kind of get that... There's not really a lot there to notice, is there? Let's be brutally honest. I mean, it does illuminate. Some of this is a little bit more illuminated. The other problem is you kind of get a time of day, so it's probably fair to say that not a lot happened there. I think the most in this game, realistically, is reflections. This was another area that I tried. Again, I'm not sure if there's anything at all. Like I said, I've not actually watched this back myself, so I've not prepared anything for this. Some of these don't play for very long. Again, that's with RT off. That's with RT on. I mean, you've got that daytime change, and that doesn't help either. But I don't think you're really noticing a lot of difference there. Oh, I've actually got music playing there. That's interesting. I think this scene here, which was... I didn't film it for very long. So that's with RT on. and then that's with RT off. Let's just go back. So that's with RT on. Obviously, you've got these reflections here that are probably a bit more pronounced, and then the reflections on the car. I suppose we might get some different shadow detail here. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, so and the reflection details. So we've got less reflection details on the vehicles, but you've also got less reflection details across these windows and with these shadowing. So it kind of does actually... Oh, no. It does change quite a lot when you can actually see these details out in the windows, which is quite interesting. It looks a lot flatter like that. It does give it much more of a 3D image, which is quite interesting. There's actually a lot going on there, and with these shadows, so more diffused up around here and then more pronounced here. Obviously the sun's shining on it here, so they're going to be more impactful here, more pronounced, and then more diffused over in this area. Small details, but it does change the scene. I don't know what the shadowing of here is. I take it that's not probably so much different. I think a lot of the difference is the reflections that you see and the shading around these windows. It's quite a bit. So that's quite interesting. This was more noticeable. That truck drove into the back of me, which is quite annoying. But this was probably just a random... I don't even know why I did this. I was recording at the time. But this is more a case of the reflections that you see in the side of the car. I don't think maybe the shadow detail a little bit. I don't know. But yeah, you can see obviously the reflection details are quite a lot different. Let's pause that again. Nope. Some of these are way too short recordings, but you can see, like, there's a lot of detail in that reflection when you can see all of the individual brickwork from obviously the building that's the opposite side of us, compared to how flat that looks. There's obviously still something there, but it's incredibly flat. Shadow details are a bit more detailed. I take it you actually get the transparency coming through from the windows, which is quite interesting in the shadows, whereas not so much like that. So that's quite interesting. That wasn't a particularly long video. Quite sure what I was doing there. So this was, I believe, yeah, this would have been with ray tracing on. As you can see, reflections. So reflections are very active. The other thing was shadows. So here we've got more diffuse shadows. And then here, it just looks a lot flatter. So there's no reflections or limited reflections. And then this kind of, the non-RT shadows are a little bit unstable. This was massive. So full of reflections. Obviously, vehicles driving past all show up in the reflections. Everything shows. The amount of detail in the reflections is quite cool. Obviously, it's a big hit on performance. Obviously, you see the reflections in the truck as the truck drives past on its cab, and then with no RT. And it's amazing as you move throughout the world how flat and 2D everything becomes without reflections. I know a lot of people say, oh, I don't care about fancy reflections, and this won't show it. I mean, you're only really, when you're driving through these type of areas where everything's reflective, so cars are reflective, there's buildings with windows everywhere, obviously both sides of the roads. It is amazing how much more three-dimensional the game becomes when you have those reflections compared to how flat and two-dimensional everything becomes, because that just doesn't, you wouldn't even think that's a window. It just looks like a very bland, blank building compared to what you get with that. Obviously, all of it. And the reflections that show up in the car. Obviously, like I said, when you see this cab go past, I didn't pause that very well, did I? Come on. You won't let me, will you? God damn. But yeah, that is incredibly flat looking. I didn't really do too much videos in motion because it's a bit more awkward on this game, and then obviously going back and then trying to do it again because there's so much stuff going on. So you still get relatively decent reflections in the cars. This one, I think, was just taking a look at shadows. So this is with no ray tracing. All the shadows are very just, there's no diffusion in them. They're just all obviously very hard shadows, whereas with these it's more diffused, so stronger down by his feet and more faded away. It does kind of change the tone of the image by quite a lot. You can see obviously how dark all of that building is down there with no RT compared to with so it's quite a different look. Obviously in the trees as well with RT they become a lot more, I think you can see more detail in a certain way. They're a bit more illuminated in between. But yes, a much more diffused look of the shadows and obviously more illumination down these buildings. So, like I said, you might prefer a contrasted image, more like that. It is a lot more contrasted. Or you might prefer, like I said, you can see here when you're looking down at all these windows now, that's like a frosted window, but you still obviously get those reflections. How much difference it looks to how flat that looks and more two-dimensional compared to with RT. Everything becomes more three-dimensional. Well, I certainly think it does. Not so noticeable in this scene because of the angle I'm at, but as you make your way through the game, I think it's very noticeable. I don't know if this will show up much, so this is with ray tracing on. I think all we're really going to see here is probably shadow details, maybe some reflective details. I'm not really quite sure why I even recorded this, but yeah. So look how flat that building looks. That's quite a difference compared to that. You obviously still get these reflections coming off these windows, all the reflections coming off these windows, compared to how flat that looks. It definitely does, well, and you can obviously see there's a lot more difference between the shading. So it changes the image quite a lot more than what you'd probably think it would. It definitely brightens a lot of the image because obviously you get more of a like I said, more of a diffused shading and then more highlights of the light bounce. So I think it transforms stuff like that, which just to me just looks very 2D, whereas that looks a lot more three-dimensional. That's kind of the way that I take on RT. Down here was, I'm not sure, I'll show you, obviously I did do some movement, and it's probably more obvious in the movement one I do in a minute. So this was with no RT, this was with RT. I don't know if there's a lot to see there, to be honest, other than the guy looked quite shiny when he walked past me. I think he had reflective skin. So again, just a difference in the shadow quality, really. A lot more brighter of a scene with RT compared to what it was. So this here was probably one of the bigger ones that shows up reflections. So obviously I had this on movement. So this is with RT on. You can obviously see my character here reflecting, the car reflecting as it went past. Obviously the reflection of other details, but you can see me here, and obviously it's reflecting this building that I'm walking past behind. Obviously you've got this full reflections down here. Again, you can see the cars that would be behind me, my car that's parked back here. And then as we move down through this area, you see like proper full-on reflections, as it should be. Obviously my reflection coming up, showing off on this window. And obviously it's not just my reflection, it's reflections all the way, but it still obviously holds its translucent look. You can still see obviously everything that's through there, through in the table. So this is quite a bit different to obviously the amount of detail that you get in this compared to turning it off. Which I believe I do in 1 moment's time. So this is now with no ray tracing. There is obviously some sort of something. Again, to me, it just doesn't give it that three-dimensional, because you're not getting the look of the obviously the extra dimension of the reflected image. So quite a lot of difference there. You'd play stuff like this and maybe not know, like those doors just now look a lot more two-dimensional and like there's nothing really in them. Everything does come to obviously life with those reflections a lot more than what you think until you look back. So reflections in this game I think are probably the biggest game changer, because there is so much glass and reflective surfaces in the game. I think that it makes a huge difference in this. And then here, again, reflective surface. So I had to play for hours to wait for it to rain. But you can see this is with ray tracing on. You can see as that car went past. Let me just pause it. So, you know, as these cars are going past, full reflections. I mean, you can see, like, obviously even the wheel details. Do you know what I mean? You've got a lot of details in these reflections. Which, that's not obviously unstable. It's the rain's obviously, it's still raining. So it's the puddles that are moving. When it's not raining, they go super glossy and flat. So obviously you can see all the building here. You can see this building here obviously has a red billboard up. Everything showing up, and then this is with ray tracing turned off. So this is the online version. It's a little bit more harder on performance. But yeah, you obviously have some reflection details to a degree of the building. You can see obviously as the vehicles move over the water with no RT, there's just no reflections from the vehicles. This car coming down now, there's nothing there. So, again, just makes everything, to me, look way more three-dimensional in the game world. That was it, really. Just a quick look, because I know some people will say that they don't think that it really changes. I think it's quite transformative. In a lot of scenarios, nothing that much. Or there probably is a lot more that I personally haven't seen myself. But I think definitely when you're looking at something like this, hugely game changing. Performance wise, obviously you can see on the 4080. I can't remember. I'm going to have a look, because the game's capped at 120. I don't know how much I was over it, so it makes it a little bit awkward. I'm going to have to go down to native. I have a feeling I might have checked it, and it was around about a 40 FPS hit from no ray tracing to full art ray tracing. Now, there is obviously some, like, that's so much different. Just as he's walking even back up through here, to see your kind of diffused reflection through this. And then obviously all of the, you know, road markings and disabled signs and stuff like that all show up. But it still has that translucent look to it, so you can see the chairs, the tables behind. That just looks so much better. But yeah, I've got a feeling it's around about 40 FPS hit on the RTX 4080. I'll have to check just to make sure. So it does take up some performance. There is probably a lot more to look at in the game. Probably someone like Terra, he'll do maybe a video on this and he'll do a far better job than what I can do, because that guy tends to nail it when it comes to ray tracing. But as far as it goes, that's my kind of quick basic look at ray tracing in this game and how much it kind of changes. So like I said, some stuff maybe not so much. In fact, when you do that, that's a huge difference. I said you might like, that's a way more contrast image, and if people prefer that, that's fine. It's even actually impressive how I'm going to assume that this chair is like it's obviously not solid, so the light's diffusing through it and just obviously making a harder shadow around the frame at the top and the bottom. That's actually quite impressive. So again, probably one of the biggest ones was how flat that looked, which is unbelievable compared to that. Obviously, it's not just that window, it's everything. All of these windows, it'll be those windows down the buildings, obviously the car reflections, that window there, the whole thing. No matter where you turn, everything looks like this when you're running rate, which is probably why it's so performance, because there is so many reflective surfaces, but just how flat that looks. I think it's quite a big change. So I'm going to leave it there, because it's probably nice to get a video that doesn't go on for half an hour. But yeah, I'm going to check it out on the XTX, because I'm going to probably see. I know it's hard to run on the XTX because it's 40 FPS on the NVIDIA GPU. So it's going to be obviously harder on the AMD GPU. But I'd like to get some footage of that, and then when the 9070 XT comes, see how much of a difference the 9070 XT with its extra ray tracing performance will make over. Because a game like this, which is heavy, it's not light RT, so it's definitely a substantial, but it's not path tracing substantial. So it'll be interesting to see when the 9070 XT comes, to be able to compare how they perform in this game, XTX versus 9070 XT with ray tracing on, because I think that could be quite a big win for the 9070 XT. If it can play this game with ray tracing, I think, to be fair, for most people, you're gonna prefer to play this game with ray tracing, because especially when you're in the city with all the reflections, and even when it rains, and then obviously with the nighttime, raining in the nighttime with all the reflections, it is completely transformative in those scenarios. I said some subtle, like that one there. This is quite subtle, but I mean, when you flick to it, it's quite noticeable. So, anyway, I'll catch you in the next one.